How far are you willing to go for a sibling that is a serial cheater, sexual deviant, domestic violence, little tyrant? Magesh Wood. We are on part two of the Pick Me's of the Patriarchy series and the men that they marry, and we are highlighting the polygamous, and tonight's character is Magesh. So, this gentleman here is Magesh Gamora, and I just realized in the first video I was completely butchering his name by calling him Manesh, but it is indeed Magesh. Now, Magesh, I did confirm him and Jonas did, in fact, grow up poor. And from what I understand, in the kind of towards the end of the series, when Magesh took Sarah and Minzy to him and Jonas's old neighborhood, um, they did grow up in poverty. And Magesh is the older brother to Jonas. And Magesh was more of the street guy, just to give you a little bit of background about. Like it was stated in the first video, Magesh and Jonas, it's not much information given about their family life. We do know that his father um, probably had a bit of a drinking problem, enjoyed being in the bars, things like that. Now, Magesh never married, never had any children. And once again, if you have not watched the series, there are spoilers. So he was never married, no children. He was actually one of my favorite characters from the show. I would say him, Pume, and Freedom were my favorite characters. So he has described this character in an interview with Mail and Guardian as loyal, kind, with low self esteem. And that makes complete sense. So when I look at him through the lens of the archetypes that I came up with in the Pick Me's of the Patriarchy and the men that they married, had he married, especially in the state that he was at the beginning of the series, he indeed would have married like the overbearing, pushy, probably just controlling wife. I do believe that he probably would have been a very nurturing father, just from what I saw in the scenes with Pume, Minzy, Sarah, all of the children. It's like he would have probably been that nurturing father. So I would like to look at him as like the passive codependent patriarch, especially with how deeply enmeshed in holding this family together, because I do look at him like Jonas's handler. He covered up so many things for Jonas. And just like I mentioned that a lot of the women in the series were huge enablers, Magesh was too. He was always cleaning up Jonas's messes, looking the other way, having to be there through probably all of the crazy schemes and plots that Jonas had set up. But yes, I consider him loyal to a fault, but I have stipulations on that. I'm going to say he was loyal to the patriarchy or the bro code, if you will. Now, what is interesting about Magesh, is that he abandoned his own happiness to be his brother's handler. And he may have felt indebted to Jonas because Jonas pulled them out of poverty. And with Magesh being the street guy, there was no formal education there. So being pulled so high up in the ranks in a $1 million company with no formal education, no work experience other than just handle your brother day to day must have been like a dream, but he still probably felt, I'm indebted to this man. So whatever he needs, whatever he says goes, right? So indeed, he never married, never had his own kids, abandoned his own happiness, and that is talked about a few times in the series. Now, when I in the first video I said that him and Jonas shared the same woman. He was dating Matipa first until Matipa saw her opportunity to go after Jonas. Big fish, CEO, millionaire, money, power, status. She, but she thought Magesh was married because that was indeed yet another cover up for Jonas and his schemes. So Magesh was supposed to be married to Essie to throw off Joyce that Essie was indeed his second wife. Um, so with Matipa passing him up for his brother, this just probably showed him that money, power, status wins. So it probably encouraged him to remain a handler instead of walking away because he could still benefit from being a part of this money, power, status dynamic, even if it meant adjacent. Now, along with that, do y'all remember the barbecue scene where him and his brother they're talking to Minzy because Minzy is sharing that he is feeling Lindani, he likes her, but she has a boyfriend. To which both brothers tell him, "You find a partner from someone else." And if that does not sum up the fact that their bro code was so strong that there wasn't any pushback or friction from Magesh when he found out that Jonas was sleeping with Matipa. He was probably like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so for just personal opinion, I do feel like that is very typical in patriarchal systems where some women are just mere chess pieces. Like, he liked her, but not enough to challenge the relationship that he had with his brother. So I found that very interesting. Another one that was extremely controversial, excuse me, was when Sarah attempted to kiss him. Absolutely grotesque behavior, and we'll talk about Sarah when we get to the pick-me's of the patriarchy part of this. But he did the right thing. He immediately pushed her off of him and immediately contacted her mother. Like, y'all got to get this girl. She is out of control. She's doing the most. This is disgusting. And if you have not seen it, but you enjoy spoilers, Sarah is his niece. That is Jonas's daughter. By this time in the series, Sarah was in full act out mode. She was pissed with her dad. She was pissed with her sister, pissed with her mother. She was just doing a lot. And in this scene, this was after Magesh had bought her a laptop for when she goes off to school. So it was just disgusting. Now, another one of my favorite scenes was my confusion when he pulled up to what we now know was Essie's home to give Sarah that thick envelope full of money. And he says, "Give this to your mom." And I'm like, huh? And right before that interaction, he pulls up, he sees Jonas's car, and he's like, "Oh, he's here." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? Oh, he's here." And that is when we get the introduction to the flashback of the history of Essie and Jonas and how Essie is actually Jonas's second wife and not Matipa. I did notice that he was very benevolent, like giving money to Matipa since Jonas had froze all of her accounts when she tried to get away. And then finally putting Jonas out of his own home when he noticed that in addition to Matipa, Jonas was beating on Joyce too. I believe she had like bruises on her chest, and he had completely blacked and bruised Matipa's face, as well as she had really, really bad webs on her back. So I feel like for Magesh, that was his line. The physical violence was it. But Magesh went back to work the next day and he was fired. And so I think the shock came from, okay, brother, I have really covered up for you. I've been there for you. I've hid things for you, and you fire me. So I think that's where a lot of that shock when he was fired came from. But in the end, Magesh found out the hard way that trying to hold his brother accountable just was not going to work. So again, he was one of my favorite characters, and I truly enjoyed his work on screen. And next up, we'll